Arcade games. These things have been around for a long time. And with Arcade 1-Up around, they're not going away anytime soon. Games like Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, and Qbert were quite popular in the early 80s. It's obvious that people really liked these games. There is just one setback. There was no way to bring these games home at the time unless you owned a game console that the game was available for, and well, that seemed quite expensive. However, at some point during this time period, a company named Coleco released tabletop versions of Frogger, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, and Zaxxon, all with permission from the original creators, of course. This was cheaper and more simple compared to having to get a game system to play the games. Eventually, other companies started doing the same thing, like Parker Brothers, who made a tabletop version of Qbert. Nintendo ended up making their own tabletop games, which were obviously based on Game & Watch games. This included Mario Cement Factory, Popeye, and Donkey Kong Jr. These smaller arcade machines have been a trend ever since then. Let's go ahead and look at these individually. Now, unfortunately, I only actually own 2 of these, so in order to cover the rest, we're gonna have to use MAME. First, let's look at Coleco's Donkey Kong. As you can probably tell, it looks quite a bit like the later Donkey Kong arcade cabinets. And look at this! They even got the bezel in! That's pretty neat! Yeah, okay, it's not an exact replica, but for what they had at the time, this is pretty cool. This is what you see when you power it on. Well, except for the flickering. Much like CRTs, most if not all cameras have a problem keeping up with the refresh rate of these kinds of displays. However, if I turn off all the lights, you can see that the game looks a million times better. Well, I guess it's about time to start the game and, well, let's see what happens. No way. Are you telling me that the tiny piezo speaker inside of the cabinet is able to produce the song that's in the arcade game? Well, that's kind of a bonus. Anyway, back to the game. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm not very good at playing this game. Well, with one hand anyway, as usual. The problem is, I need one of the hands to press the jump button, but I'm holding my camera with that other hand. So, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to show some cutscenes instead. And there it is again! And would you believe me if I said that there's more than one level? Cause guess what? There is! Yeah, you can tell that Coleco put a lot of effort into this. So you know those yellow parts that are on the floor? Well, those are the rivets from level 2. You're supposed to get rid of them by walking over them. If you have played just about any version of Donkey Kong out there, then you're probably familiar with this level. Once you get rid of all the rivets, you're sent back to level 1, and then the game loops from there. Oh, look at that. I almost forgot to cover the controls. Yes, this joystick, it actually feels very, very satisfying to move. I mean, not even tabletops from today could get this right. But it also feels pretty good. Yeah, I can't complain about that. Overall, I think this is a really, really cool device. I would definitely like to see more companies try to make modern Donkey Kong arcade cabinets, no matter what size. If an arcade 1-Up Donkey Kong cabinet was ever to be announced, I would freak out. Well, now that we got the tabletop version of Donkey Kong out of the way, now we can look at the tabletop version of Qbert from Parker Brothers. Unlike Coleco's tabletop version of Donkey Kong, this isn't trying to look like the arcade cabinet, although the bezel looks similar. The only part that resembles the arcade cabinet is the side art. Wait a minute, hold on, scratch that. What if I turn it around? What the f***? They flipped the side art? What is the point of that? The side art on the original cabinet looks exactly the same on both sides. Now, I'm sure the casual person wouldn't mind this or even notice it, but for a person like me who knows what the arcade cabinet looks like, it kinda bothers me. Talk about a useless feature. Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit too critical. I mean, maybe they did it to add some style to it, who knows. The quality of this tabletop isn't as good as the Coleco ones, but it's still pretty good. In fact, this one looks really nice. Notice how there isn't a single button on this tabletop. Well, that's because for a game like Qbert, a button is unnecessary and is never used. Now, what kind of batteries does it use, you may ask? Oh. Yep, it uses 4C batteries. But guess what? It's not just Qbert. Every single tabletop that Coleco has ever released requires C batteries, including Donkey Kong. So one feature that I thought was really cool is that you can start the game but with no sound. This is useful for when you're trying not to interrupt anyone during gameplay. In terms of the gameplay, there really isn't a lot to say. Just about everything that was in the arcade game is on here. In fact, I think this is a little more accurate than Donkey Kong. Maybe that's just because Qbert's a more easier game to put on here because it's so simple. You can even trick Coily into jumping out of the stage and killing himself. Now that is awesome. My only actual complaint, which is actually very minor, is that there is no music at all. It's literally just beeps and boops. I mean, Donkey Kong used the exact same technology and even that had music, so why not here? But again, it's very minor and it's not a deal breaker by any means. Overall, I think these items are really cool, and if you want to play, classic games wherever you go, these aren't a bad option. Let's just hope you have a lot of money to get them, because these things can be expensive nowadays. Well, this concludes part 1 of my 100 subscriber special. I hope you enjoyed. Now, obviously, since I said this is the end of part 1, that means that there is more. So, stay tuned for part 2, and I'm gonna play other tabletop games using MAME. But for now, see ya!